In accordance with the requirements of the New Jersey statutes regarding open public meeting, notice of this meeting was legally advertised in the Courier Post, the South Jersey Times, and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Fire exits are located through the double doors to your right and left. Please silence all mobile devices. Everybody stand for the flag salute, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Here.
Mr. Longfellow?
Here.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Fazio? Mayor Gattinelli is ill. Mr. Platt?
Here.
And Mr. Gonter's excused. He's away.
Okay. We have approval of the bill list for December 27, 2017. Motion to approve the bill list.
Make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion on the bill list? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes. Approval of regular minutes for December 13, 2017. Motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Any discussion on the notes? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes. Okay, moving on to the ordinances. Ordinance 36-2017, reintroducing ordinance amending a chapter of the Code of the Township of Washington, Chapter 260, Vehicles and Traffic, Salina Road. This ordinance amends the speed limit up from 25 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour based on the recommendations of the police department and agreement with township engineers. This ordinance is up for adoption. I get a motion open to the public.
Make that motion.
Second. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
No, to open it to the public?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
That's 4 ayes for opening it to the public.
Okay, anybody from the public wish to speak on this adoption? Seeing no one from the public, motion to close.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
You can do a voice vote on opening and closing the public portions if you'd like, Mr. Perry.
Okay. Let's do a voice one.
Aye.
Aye.
No, we'll just be
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, a motion to adopt.
I'd like to just ask Anina or the chief of police if you have any, what's the basis for the recommendation?
So, apparently, I'm gonna go over here.
Go to the mic, please.
Thank you.
Just your name for the record, please.
Nina Hogan. I don't think it's on, but it is.
So you can talk
Okay,
loud.
perfect. I'm loud.
You are.
So many moons ago, I don't have the exact date, the speed limit of Salina Road had been changed from 40 to 25. It had been changed by, I guess, just by an ordinance or by a resolution by mayor and council. The problem was there was nothing to substantiate that change. And the speed limit of Salina Road had been previously set at 40 miles an hour by a speed study. And although it did give, there was a change to the DOT regulations that gave jurisdiction to the municipality to make modifications to the speed limit, it was with the recommendation and investigation done by the police department and the township engineer with that. So that speed limit change to 25 had been done without any backup, unfortunately. So it's unenforceable. So the police haven't been able to, they can't write enforceable tickets out there. So unfortunately, the speed on Salina is still the same. They're driving the same speed that they were driving back when it was set at 40 miles an hour. It hasn't actually made things better. So the ability of the police to actually make things better, but what they do get is an occasional tailgating and another problem because it is a stretch where the people who do try to drive the 25 now have people kind of tailgating on them. So we were asked last year to take a look at Selena, as well as I think Herfield and a couple other locations, say, listen, is this really appropriate for 25? And if it is, can we get some backup into the file so that we can actually properly support it? Now, that had been under a previous administration. There were some traffic counts. It took some time. So none of this really kind of came to fruition with all the information back until earlier into this year. And so when we looked at it, the reality is the speed on the road is still similar to where it was. It's close to that 40 miles an hour range. So we were actually able to make a recommendation due to conditions to 35 from a standpoint of the speed study. So what had happened was the residents, of course, were very upset about that. We talked with the police and with the residents, actually the chief, I think, spoke with the residents themselves and discussed 30 miles an hour was probably something that the police felt that they could enforce, that they may be able to actually effectuate and get people to slow down. So now this is something where an ordinance has a recommendation for the police department of a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, a speed study of 35, so that basically giving us something to substantiate something that can actually enforce a 30 mile an hour. Earlier in the year, when it had came in at 35, the residents came out and we actually asked you to pull it from the agenda.
Yeah, I recall.
It came back in, I guess, on 30, and I'm guessing it came in when the chief and I weren't here. And we didn't realize it got pulled off the agenda. I guess maybe because we weren't here to ask questions. So this came up because there was a request to change the speed limit signs to be able to do the enforcement from the police department, and it came to our knowledge that it actually had not been adopted. The chief can absolutely speak for himself and add more to this. I just wanted to kind of give you our part. So the reality is this is to try to help slow it down.
So just for clarification, we can't write tickets at the current level of 25 and be able to actually stand them up in court.
From what I understand, it was improperly changed.
Okay. So it was changed from 40 to 25 improperly, but Anina and the chief, you're comfortable with a 30 mile an hour speed limit for safety and to be able to enforce that on that road?
Yes, definitely.
Were all the residents that were on that road comfortable with that? Was it complete buy-in?
Spoke to many residents that were happy with it being changed to 30, just not 35.
When you say all, it was the residents who came here
Yeah.
at a previous adoption who spoke to the chief face to face.
Yes, we went out and spoke
I can't speak to who
spoke
every
to them
single
in the
one
hallway.
was.
I just wanted to see if it was the majority versus, how many houses about are on that road? Is it like 20?
It's a pretty long stretch. It's a good bit of homes. I don't have I would think it's more than 20. I think that there was probably 12 to 15 represented.
They were well represented, but they were satisfied with it being changed to 30.
And if we don't vote yes on this, it will remain the same, not enforceable at 25, 40. Okay. Thank you for the information.
Need a motion still, so.
Okay, need a motion to adopt?
Make that motion.
Second? I'll second it. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call.
Ms. Donato?
No.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay. Ordinance 037-2017. This ordinance amending the code of the Township of Washington, Chapter 80, Article 1, Section 80-13-1, Fire Prevention Inspection Fees. Motion to open to the public on this ordinance.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Seeing no public, motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you.
You get a motion to adopt?
Make the motion to adopt ordinance 37.
I'll second. Any discussion on this one?
Yes, sir.
Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 038-2017, ordinance adopting and amending Employee Policies and Procedures Manual for the Township of Washington. This ordinance is for adoption. Motion to open public hearing.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no public, motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adopt. Anybody want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes. Ordinance 039-2017, ordinance amending Chapter 80 entitled Fees of the Code of Township of Washington. This ordinance is for adoption. Motion to open to the public.
Make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing no one from the public, motion to close.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes. Ordinance 040-2017, amending Chapter 2, Article 4, the Code of Township of Washington, Department of Law. This ordinance is for adoption. Motion to open the public hearing?
I'll
Make that
the
motion.
Oh,
Second.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
I have Donato making the motion, Longfellow making the second.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again, seeing no one from the public, motion to close?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Discussion?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
want to discuss it?
Yes. I was gonna propose if we could put this out on RFP to make sure that the cost is adequate before we vote on it and adopt the salary ordinance in January. That's my recommendation, if we could do that. Does anybody have any comments?
So you want to put this out to RFP? It's
Yeah, to get proposals, and then from there, we could, once we get our proposals, if this is in line, then we could change the salary ordinance. That's my suggestion.
Okay. We can look into that. I don't know that an RFP would necessarily be required.
Okay, whatever.
Ma'am,
So-
do you understand the ordinance actually just
Yes, I
is changing
understand
to
it.
increase the duties
I understand it.
of the solicitor, so it's not looking for an RFP
Isn't
to
it gonna
hire
be
somebody.
it's a separate item, though, on the salary ordinance?
I don't have a
existing-
salary ordinance in front of me at this time.
I know it is, but I'm just suggesting if we could go out on RFP for this, because it's additional services.
And that's something we could do in 2017. It does say when required by council or the mayor, so we could potentially not require the solicitor to do those duties and use somebody else if we found that the fee,
It's more
that would be more
cost-effective.
cost effective. So that's why I'm comfortable the way it's written.
I don't have any other comments.
I'd like to jump in.
Let the record reflect, Mr. President of Council, Mr. Fazio has arrived.
We're now in discussion. We've had public portion, no public on ordinance 40, and we're in the middle of this motion. Second has been made, and we're in discussion.
So me and Sean spoke about this the other night. And I think that it's confusing because you'd think what this allows is it gives him the duties of a position that kind of exists already. So the way we discussed it was that you don't have to go out for an RFP for the year of 2018 because us changing this ordinance puts it in his lap. So, and the discussion was like, all right, how do we know that it's a fair number? That's really what the question is. And reality is, it's like, you can only look at what other towns are paying that position and what we've paid before. And if we only do it for a year, we're not getting hurt because we already know of 2 projects potentially that are coming. So we're not in a bad position to give him the duties. It's not going to hurt the town. You know, it's a fair amount of money for Stuart. I think he'd agree. I mean, you know, you can say no to it, but at the same time, this isn't like there's no politics at play with this. This is just a position that needs to be filled would you rather have somebody else involved doing it, probably billing a lot more, or somebody who's already involved in the process that has experience doing it to do it, is really the question. Now, where me and Sean had this conversation is like, well, how do we know, that we're getting the right amount from him? We're not 100% sure. But at the same time, it's, from what we've seen before with the pilot, it's really decent, the amount of money that he'd get. I mean, he's not overcharging the town, in my opinion.
It's
And
actually less than what I've seen.
It depends on the number of projects and then how much other companies would charge, what their rate is. So I would like just a projection before I make that decision, to be honest.
so, like, what'll happen is an escrow account would open up through these applicants. And in that escrow account, that's where Stuart would potentially bill from, is kind of how it works. So a lot of the funds would get paid back to the town through that escrow. And then after that, what would happen is, we could get stuck with maybe $5,000 that we end up having to pay him because it's written in that salary. So, there's a plus and minus. Or he could do more than what that 25,000 is the number,
Or
correct?
less.
Assuming that this ordinance passes, I will be asking council for $25,000 to cover the salary for redevelopment work, and as you've explained, a majority of that will be reimbursed to the township through escrow agreements. The municipal land use law specifically allows a salaried employee that provides services for redevelopment or even for planning or zoning boards to have a portion of that salary reimbursed through an escrow agreement. So whether this was an outside person or an inside person, it wouldn't matter. It's both going to be escrowed. But this is a salary that would be reimbursed primarily to the township through the escrow agreements that we do. So, and in order to do that, I have to keep track of my time. So at the end of the year, there's going to be a listing of hours spent doing redevelopment work. So you'll see whether or not the $25,000 was worth it or not worth it. Of course, you can't take a look at these things as just dollars and cents. It's who's doing the work, how well the work can be done, who's got the specific subspecialty of skills to do all of this work. So that was a number that I have used based upon my experience in doing it from a standpoint of special redevelopment attorney as an outside RFP. I thought that was a fair number based upon the at least two projects that we already have and the number of other redevelopment projects that we're likely to get, especially if we're going to move this town past the abandoned buildings issues that we have. Redevelopment's probably the key to getting a lot of this stuff done. So $25,000 I thought was a fair, it's not before you now, but that's would be the request for full disclosure when we get to the salary ordinance, $25,000. So, and as everybody knows, that this is designed to add to my responsibilities. This is not a raise. This is additional work for which I would expect to be paid additionally like anybody else. And as I said, it makes sense. I know this area of work, and I'm already your solicitor. There's no reason why you shouldn't have the person that is already doing your legal work do this legal work as long as I have the experience and the know-how, which I do. So that was the whole idea to do this. It's obviously your decision, and for $25,000, I think you're getting a bargain.
How will the duties and responsibilities be managed between the solicitor position and this additional work? So that's another concern I have too.
Work.
Right, but how do I know what time is being spent, done, during the normal solicitor hours? Like, when will you be working? Like, I would like to see, it's how the time would be devised, I guess.
I asked him about this last night we spoke, and I asked him if he could track the hours that he spends doing that type of work. He'd appreciate it. So that way we can see really, how much of his time was spent there, and, if we're footing the bill where we're not getting it from the escrow accounts, how much the difference would be. The other thing is, too, if you do the math you average it about $200 an hour. It was a fair number, 180 to 200. So that's the average rate that anyone in that position would charge, whether it's someone in the private sector or public. So it comes out to about 130 hours, I think, was the number.
That
of,
based on projections for 2018?
yes, that's for 2018. That $25,000, divide that by about 200, you get about 100 to 120 hours. So 120 hours of his
About 2 to
time.
2.5 hours extra a week.
Yeah.
And I have to keep the time because if you're going to, it's not billed per se, but the salary is charged to the escrow. So I have to keep it anyway, and I would keep it so that we can track whether or not it works. Hey, listen, it may not work out for me. I may say next year, folks, I spent $40,000 worth of time and only got paid $25,000, so either I get $40,000 or let somebody else do it. So it may not work out either way. But I thought this was striking a fair balance, based upon my experience. Sometimes you just got to rely upon somebody who's been doing it for 20-plus years.
Do you have any other questions?
Nope.
Anyone else? Let's call for a motion.
Mr. President, we already have a motion on the
Oh.
floor. That was Ms. D'Amato made the motion. Second was Mr. Perry. We started the vote. Ms. Donato cast a yay vote, and at that point, Ms. Pasqualone initiated the discussion. So we're at the point of taking votes and calling for votes now.
Take the vote again, so in case the discussion would change the Donato vote. So why don't we start roll call again?
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Donato, a second by Mr. Perry, calling for the votes. Ms. Donato?
Still a yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Passes.
All right. Was that the last ordinance?
Yes.
Okay, so we're on resolutions. Thanks, Jeff. You didn't want to read all this? All right.
I saved it for you. I know how you like doing it.
The following resolutions are consent agenda and only require a vote for all listed. Each one must be read by title. If any council member wishes to have one removed, heard separately, they need to indicate it prior to reading the titles. And real quick, just go over it. I have to check it real quick because I don't know if it changed since the last draft.
Nothing
I think we're
changed.
good.
We've
Nothing
just
did?
pulled one, sir.
What did we pull?
362 was taken off the agenda. You no longer have it.
Yeah, it's not even on here, is it?
No, sir. It was
Okay.
removed prior to the meeting.
Everybody good?
Yes.
All right, Resolution 357, 2017, approving and authorizing a lien on real property of the Township of Washington for maintenance work for the Township of Washington. Resolution 358, 2017, tax overpayments for December 13th, 2017. Resolution 359, 2017, safe and secure 2016 and 2017. Resolution 360, 2017, closed petty cash for 2017. And Resolution 361, 2017, authorizing a contract to facilitate Solution Group, Inc. for light upgrades for energy efficiency. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Move on to old business. If anyone would like to speak about anything old? New business? Reports?
I just want to say that the township had their first breakfast with Santa, and it went off very well. I expect next year will probably be even bigger. Good time was had by all. Santa, Mrs. Claus. There was a polar bear that showed up. It was pretty good. So
Did they
it was.
use my office? Because that's the only thing that wasn't used for Christmas.
That's next week. He'll be there next week. So for everybody to put that together was a really nice job, and the kids really enjoyed themselves.
They did.
And I can see that as maybe something that continues on in the township. It was very well received. Thanks to the fire department that was there, and the police officers, and McGruff. McGruff showed up too. I forgot about him.
Yeah, McGruff was there. It was great.
We'll move on to public participation, if anyone else has anything.
Say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Oh, we got to the end of
Oh,
the
wait,
meeting
yes.
for that one.
Okay.
Motion to open to the public.
I'll
Make
make the
that
motion.
motion.
Oh, I'll
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now open to the public, if anyone wants to come up.
Third.
Good evening, Council.
evening, sir.
My name's Robert Davis from Colts Neck Development, right off Salina. I use that 10 times a day. 30 miles an hour is great for me. Last meeting, there was a gentleman came up, asked about if cannabis was legalized in the state, how would council feel about having a store here? And at least 2 of the council members said they thought it was proper. I'd like to just address that and see if I can get some answers to where I'm wrong. The first one was revenue, that if it's being sold anyway under the table, it would add revenue. Well, if a person is making $40,000, $50,000 and on a Friday night decides to spend their money at the local cannabis store, and then on Saturday wants to take their date or their wife or whatever to a restaurant for lunch, all of a sudden, I don't have the money to do that because we were out smoking grass the other night. So it's not going to really add revenue. It's just going to change the source of that revenue. Instead of the restaurant, it's going to be at this local weed shop. Secondly, that restaurant who now does not have the revenue coming in because they don't have the people eating there may close. So you're going to lose revenue from that restaurant. If you wanted to get revenue, we have now cigarettes, which are perfectly legal. But you say you can't smoke until, I don't know, is it 21 or 18 now? 21. Open up smoking to the high schools. Put cigarette machines into the school. Let everybody smoke. You're going to have plenty of revenue. But nobody wants to do that, and rightfully so. You don't want people to smoke. But it would increase revenue. So just doing something because you think it may increase revenue doesn't mean it's the proper thing to do. We shouldn't have smoking in high schools. We shouldn't. I haven't smoked for 50 years. But just because you think it may get additional revenue doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Health. Again, going back to cigarettes, we're told that cigarettes cause lung cancer. So you're 21 years old, you're going to get lung cancer when you're 60 or 70 years old, so it's no good. But what would cannabis do to your health? You're 40 years, you're 21 years old, 40 years, cannabis affects the brain, it doesn't affect the lungs. So you're going to have a bunch of people walking around who may have lost some degree of cells in their thinking behavior, depending on how much they've smoked and how long and so on and so forth. But you don't know what that's going to do to you in 40 years. And thirdly, with health, it's a gateway drug. You can say there's 100 people who smoke cannabis, and 98 of them have never touched an additional drug. But how about those 2? Do you really want those 2 people to now be smoking heroin or whatever they have? You're really changing the whole idea of what this community is as a family community as far as health. Next one is safety. Right now, how many additional accidents would there be if cannabis was legalized? You have another chance for the police. I was talking earlier with the chief. How many additional stops would the police have to make on the people driving cars? You go into your pot shop, you go out to the driveway, you smoke whatever you want, and then you get on the road. It's not like cigarettes, where you can smoke a pack of cigarettes. It doesn't affect you at the moment. Again, down the road it will, but not at the moment. You smoke a couple of joints, you might be flying, depending on what you're buying, I guess. But you're not prepared for being out on the road. It's not safe.
1 minute left.
Excuse me?
1 minute left.
Okay. I'll read you this one thing and then I'll be done. This is for somebody in San Diego. For 17 years, this person suffered periodic episodes of violent retching and abdominal pain that would knock her off her feet for days, sometimes leaving her writhing on the floor in pain. I've screamed out for death, she said. I've cried out of my room for my mother, who's been dead for 20 years. She lost a modeling job and she was mistaken for an alcoholic. She racked up tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills, and her nausea interrupted her sex life. And towards the end of her illness, the 5'9" woman weighed 109 pounds. To make a long story short, it was finally recognized that it was because of smoking cannabis, that she smoked too much of it. She didn't have cancer. She had an obscure syndrome called cannabinoid hypernemesis, a condition that only was recently acknowledged by the medical community.
Thank you.
There's lots of reasons not to. I'd like to hear why you think that it would be proper.
All right. Yeah, we'll
Oh,
address
if I
it.
could say one more thing.
No.
No?
We got to wrap it
Okay.
up.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
Right.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, motion to close.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I don't know if anyone else wants to go first or even
I'll
address
say
it.
something. Yeah, as far as I stand right now, I don't agree with it, and I wouldn't be supportive of that, but I don't have all the information in front of me to make an informed decision. That's very, that's in the future. There's a lot of obstacles and laws that need to be passed before this is even voted on in this town. But as I stand now, I wouldn't support that decision.
Yeah, you're not going to see, I mean, it's good to have the conversation now. The town should have the conversation now because more than likely it's going to get passed in New Jersey. You know, as far as revenue goes, I mean, I think you're going to see majority of the revenue for taxes go to the state than you would a municipality. So it's not really, it's more or less just another business in town. Think of it that way. Where people spend their money, it's up to them. It's America. You can do what you want. You know, as long as you're within the law, you're good. Now, him not having, it's an interesting point. Him not having the money to take his wife or girlfriend out to dinner the next night. That's something that, you know, people around the dinner table need to talk about and address that with a family member, where you spend your money or time is, you know, kind of in your household. You need to resolve that problem yourself. And we can debate it to death and talk about it, but reality is, once it's passed in New Jersey, the town council and administration at the time is going to have to make a decision, and whoever's here to do it, I'm sure they're going to make the right choice. So, with that said, anyone else have any more comments?
The only comment, I know that Mayor and Jason aren't here, but on behalf of the administration, we'd like to wish everybody on council and all the residents a happy and healthy new year.
And with that said, reorganization is scheduled for January 3rd, 2018 at 6 o'clock. I promise I won't be late.
At 6 o'clock.
Yes. Well, I thought tonight was 6.
Yeah, we know.
Why don't you put in your book 5 o'clock? So we know you're gonna do it.
It's like I knew it was earlier, but wasn't sure how early. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Happy
Meeting's
New Year,
over.
everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
New Year.